It's been an exciting time to be here on campus. In 1984, excuse me, in 1984, I moved my family from Battlefield, Utah to Laie. The reason why I moved over here is because I had a young son, my fourth child, who had muscular dystrophy. And the doctors in Utah, excuse me for a second, wanted to put a trach into him so that they could toilet his lungs so they could make him breathe better. I thought that was not a really great idea because he'd have to live on a ventilator, and they showed us kids living in the hospital on ventilators. Didn't look too desirable. And so we packed up 7 children at that time, a nanny, because we spent most of our time with my son Brady in the hospital and thought in case we had to go there we needed some help, and we moved over to Laie. And the reason why we did that is because we'd taken my son on many trips before, and if we got down to sea level, it would clean out his lungs and make him so he could breathe well. The warm weather, the pretty breezes over here, we thought, couldn't find a better place in the world than go to Laie, because the LDS culture was here. We were coming from Bountiful, which was LDS. It would be an ideal situation. Well, we moved in. We had a hard time finding housing. I'm sure none of you have a hard time finding housing in Laie. There seems to be a surplus of really adequate housing. But we ended up out in Turtle Bay because that's the only place we could find someplace big enough to accommodate our family. Well, I had not done my homework. There is something to say about Hawaii when they say there's a leeward side and there's a windward side. Now, I'm sure none of you have made that mistake about the leeward and windward and what happens on the windward side of the island. Well, this side, as you're probably well aware from all your wonderful hairdos that we have, that the wind blows over here. And this was not the best situation for Brady. I had gone back to the mainland to run my businesses there, and I got a call from my wife, Elaine, saying, "Hey, Brady, his lungs have all collapsed. We need to fly him over to Kapulani Children's Hospital." "And get over here just as soon as you can." I, being in Salt Lake, found a flight in 3 hours leaving, hopped on the airplane, got over here, and luckily Brady was alive. He was in the hospital. We spent, what, 6 months in the hospital, got him well enough to take him home. But our plans of trying to live here in Laie just didn't work out. It wasn't the right time, wasn't the right place for us. You know, I look back at my life, and all my life, just like many of you people here today, have kind of planned out what you want to be and what you want to become. Unfortunately, what I can tell you is going down that road, the only constant thing you're going to find in life is change. What you prepare to do today will probably not be what you're going to do tomorrow. I'd like to just go a little bit. You folks want to come on in? The thing that I find is that there's always constant change in life. I thought I had my life all planned out when I was your age. I graduated from high school, went on a mission to England, had the opportunity over there of working with some wonderful, wonderful people. Anybody from England here? Yay, Brits. Okay. Great opportunities over there working with those people. I left a beautiful girl at home I was in love with. I came home and I found out she was in love too, but not with me. I'm sure that has not happened to any of you returned missionaries, right? You get home and that sweet young thing that you left is still a sweet young thing, but she's a sweet young thing for somebody else. So my life changed. I was going to decide what I was going to become. Looking around and trying to figure out a good occupation, I decided on accounting. I loved to count money. I love business, and accounting was the language of business. And so I studied, went through accounting, and my professor said, "Steve, if you really want to be successful, you need to get a law degree too. Because if you have your certified public accountant and a law degree, you can write your ticket in life. You can decide what you want to do. I said, that sounds pretty good. So I graduated, passed my CPA exam, became a certified public accountant, got admitted into law school. And at that particular time, back in the early 70s, or late 60s, early 70s, there was a war going on called the War in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, you had the opportunity to serve your country through what was called the draft board. If you won the lottery, which is different than the lottery today, you got your number picked out and you got to serve. Well, my number came up, and it was a very low number. So I knew that I was going to be going to Vietnam, so I got into the ROTC program, which was a Reserve Officers Training Program. In the ROTC, I got into a 2-year program. I was going to go to law school. I left Price Waterhouse and Company in Los Angeles, where I had an internship doing accounting. We were auditing Paramount Motion Pictures at that time. Came back to go to law school. Went in law school and found out that I was 4,000 pages behind in my reading because I missed the introductory week because I was working. And I said, 4,000 pages? They said, yes, just, a couple days you'll pick that right up. I thought, something is wrong here. I went out and started talking to attorneys. I says, are you happy being an attorney? And they looked at me with startledness in their eyes and saying, are you kidding me? No, really, do you want to be an attorney? And I found about 80% of them were attorneys because that's what they went into, but they weren't happy. They weren't excited about being a lawyer. So I decided that I wasn't going to become a lawyer. It took me 1 week in law school to make up my mind. Luckily, I had a friend who was our next door neighbor who was a commanding general for the ROTC at Utah State. And I said, hey, can I get in your program? He said, well, you got to take a test, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, but we'll see. So I went up and took his examination. Got enrolled in the MBA program at Utah State. Decided what I was going to do was just finish my MBA program and hopefully could get into ROTC. Well, the general came back and said, Steve, I've got bad news. I said, what's that? He said, well, we grade everybody on the exam, and depending on where you score on the exam is depending on what your rank is going to be in the ROTC program. He said, you scored the highest on the exam, and so you get to be the lieutenant colonel or cadet colonel. I thought, now that was good because I'd never been in ROTC before, never carried a rifle, never walked, never marched, but I loved studying war history and I loved studying the military, and that was kind of my hobby. So getting a high grade was nothing really too exciting for me. So I was a cadet commander. I could get through law school. After I left law school, I was there. I had accomplished my undergraduate program. I'd accomplished my advanced program, getting my MBA. I was getting really, really close within about 2 months of graduating and getting my commission. But I hadn't accomplished the most important thing that I should accomplish. Who's got a student activity card? How many guys have got activity cards? Has everybody got an activity card? An ID card? Okay. What does that ID card represent, guys and gals? All you that are not married, what does it represent? It represents a hunting license that you've got 9 semesters. Correct? You've got 9 semesters to complete your advanced program in marriage. And if you blow it, guys and gals, you leave the happy hunting ground. Where's the best place to go fishing? Where the fish are. Where's the best place to go hunting? Where the deer are. Okay? Don't blow it. I know some of you are married in here, some of you aren't. I got within 6 weeks of graduating my MBA program. Okay? And then I made the best discovery of my life. Would you do the first slide? No, no, no. That's, what? Okay. The reason why I mentioned about the cadet commander in ROTC is because my wife was the cadet commander of the women's sponsor group. And one of my duties as commander of the ROTC was to choose the new sponsors the next year. So one of my duties that afternoon or that evening, I walked down to the room that was designated for all these young ladies to try out for sponsors, and my wife was standing at the door. Of course, she has a different version of this, but mine's a true version. Anyway, she was standing at the door, and I says, is this the room that I'm supposed to go to? I had my uniform on, you know, looked real spiffy. And she said, yes. I said, okay. And I was walking in. She says, you're sitting by me. So she set me down in that chair, and I've been there ever since. A good Army officer knows how to take orders. Right? So 6 weeks later, we were engaged on Christmas Eve. That was our engagement picture. 6 weeks after that, we got married in the Logan Temple. Next slide. 42 years later, we haven't changed a bit, right? Same eyes. You can always tell by the eyes. 42 years later, next slide. 8 children, 25 grandchildren, 2 more coming. Next slide. This is the trip we took last October. I took all the children on a cruise on the Odyssey. No, excuse me, Allure of the Seas. Yes? Well, that's the back of the ship. It's the biggest cruise ship in the world. It was lots and lots of fun. The kids had a great time. Okay. But anyway, 42 years have gone by. I'd like to talk to you about now going back a ways and things I learned getting to my business and professional career. Things that you're probably going to learn about. First thing I was called, I accepted a job as a certified public accountant for Arthur Anderson and Company in Phoenix, Arizona. I left in January, came back in February, and we got married. But I started working down there for the CPA firm. I had passed my CPA exam the very first time I had taken it. I was straight A's through my accounting program. Boy, did I think I was smart. I knew I could combine General Motors' statement with Ford's statement. I could throw in American Motors there if I had to and combine them all together, and I knew all this different stuff. First day I got there, the senior on our job said, Steve, I want you to go down and check invoices in the shipping department. Steve panicked. All the way through my accounting classes, my MBA program, and my schooling, none of my teachers had ever used the word invoice. There was shipping document, there was this other kind of document, but the very simple word that everybody is familiar with in the real world, called an invoice, nobody had told me. Believe it or not, I'd got this far in my schooling education, and I didn't know what an invoice was. I had to take a good evaluation of myself and think, Steve, maybe you're not as smart as you think you are. Maybe you can learn. Maybe there's some other things in life not found in a textbook that's going to be meaningful to you. Lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is not quite as cerebral as that lesson, but I was always, as Pam and Wynn know, very tight with money. And so my wife wasn't there. I brought a sack lunch the very first day at work. Why not have a sack lunch? I had extra food at home. I wasn't going to spend $5 or $6 to go out and eat. I brought a sack lunch. And you would have thought I had committed murder in that office. You know, I was a professional. Partner in charge calls me in and says, Steve, You don't bring a sack lunch to work. You are now a professional. You wear a tie. You have a white shirt. You are required to go out to lunch with clients or by yourself or by other people in the office, go to a nice restaurant, and have your lunch. They were not LDS, and he also meant to have a few drinks or so forth like that, which this went against everything that I'd been taught. You know, why spend $5 at that time for a big hamburger at some restaurant? Or if you have a drink or something, even a soda pop, it's going to raise the price on it. Why spend that when I can take something from home that doesn't cost me anything? Just because I am a professional. I had to get fat. I had to do this stuff just to impress other people. Didn't sit well with me. After my wife and I got married, she came down, she worked downtown too. I would always nod, say, yes, we're going out to lunch, and I have an engagement, which I did with my wife. She'd bring the sack lunch and come from the title company where she worked. We'd go 2 blocks to Jack in the Box and have our lunch. You know, this saved about $250, $300 a month by not going out to lunch. Third thing I realized when I first started was you got to be very careful about accepting promotions. Back about 2 months into my training, the tax partner comes to me and says, Steve, we're now going to promote you to the tax department. Boy, doesn't a promotion sound good to you? You know that word they talk about in school all the time, you want to get promoted, you want to get brought up. So I said, sure, I'd love to do that. Came home and talked to Erlene, getting a promotion, fantastic. Well, the promotion was move up 1 floor in the building and always turn off your cell phones, okay? Move up 1 floor in the building and go into a great big room with a whole bunch of desks. This wasn't too bad, but everybody in Phoenix, Arizona that I was working with at that particular time was non-LDS, and they all had a habit of smoking. And it was before the Surgeon General said, hey, smoking's bad for your health. So that room, you could probably cut it with a knife to get through all the smoke, to get back to your room, to sit down. So here I was, starting a brand new profession, realizing I wasn't as smart as I thought I was because I didn't know what an invoice was. I couldn't have a sack lunch, and I was going to die of cancer from secondhand smoke sitting in this office. But at least, guys, I'd have a tie on when I died. So, you know, things weren't all that bad. But thank goodness, the Army came along and said, Steve, it's time for you to come in. So I got out of the smoke-filled room, could finally breathe again, went back to Fort Benjamin Harrison, and went to finance training school, become a second lieutenant in the finance corps. Well, Erlene and I both had loved the military, loved our experience that we had, and we thought maybe of staying in. We got there. We were smart enough when we went there that we found out that if you go late enough to check in, you can be TDY, your temporary duty station. There's no housing for you, and so they'll pay you money to live off base. Erlene's sister lived back there, and we thought we'd live with her, save this money again, okay? So we got that, we accomplished it, we're saving money, living with her sister, accumulating some stuff, and the second day that we were in class, the general walks in, and he says, I just got a call from the Pentagon. The Vietnam War is starting to wrap up. We do not need half of the second lieutenants that we have. How many want out? Okay, everybody's hand flies up in the air. They have a lottery, and 3 weeks later, I'm no longer in the military. The thing I find is the consistency in life has changed. We left Phoenix, Arizona. It was not a place that my wife dearly loved. She was from a place called Providence, Utah, in Cache Valley. And since she was such a loving wife and adored her new husband so much, she said, honey, I will go anywhere in the world you want to go, as long. And And that was about 90 miles in those days, okay? So being a great business person, I put a pin in Providence, Utah, and a string, and drove a circle for 90 miles. Now that gave us the opportunity to go to Soda Springs, Idaho, go to Evanston, Wyoming, or Dugway Proving Grounds, where they're killing sheep with poison gas, or Salt Lake City. So when you use that kind of an analysis, it kind of limits your choices, and Salt Lake didn't seem that bad, so we decided to go to Salt Lake City. I got a job with a local CPA firm there, which I really enjoyed. At a local firm now, I had the opportunity to do a lot more things than I had at a big firm. When I was with Arthur Anderson, I was doing taxes. When I was with Price Waterhouse in LA, I did Department of Water and Power for the city of LA. Building huge, didn't meet hardly anybody. I did Paramount Motion Pictures. Big thing I had, I got to walk through the set of Star Trek every day to get to my office, or down the street where Gunsmoke was being filmed. But didn't get to see many people. When I got into a small accounting firm, again, it wasn't as prestigious, but I started to learn some things. I conducted audits. I started working with these people that were of benefit to try to help them in their accounting problems. I had always had a view of people with knowledge of accounting, knowledge of business, and entrepreneurs as way up here on a ladder. They were people that, had made the right decisions, were very, very smart, and knew how to control things and so forth to make a profit for themselves or for everybody who was working with them. I started doing their books and started seeing how they were doing a lot of stuff they taught us in college, and started realizing that they were not really much different than you and me. And in fact, I thought sometimes that some of the decisions that they made, and I know my wife said I shouldn't use this word, but they were stupid. They just didn't seem to make much sense. And I thought about this for 3 or 4 months, and I was doing an audit of a small business, and all of a sudden, do you guys know what this is? The light globe. It went off in my head. The light globe goes off and says, Steve, wait a minute. Who's being stupid here and who's being smart? I was doing a reconciliation of the compensation paid to the owner. And I saw what he made, and I took my wallet out, and I pulled out my paycheck, and I looked what I was making. There was a difference. There was a difference in the compensation. Guess who had the biggest paycheck? It wasn't Steve. It wasn't Steve. It was the other guy. I realized then and there that in order to be smart, I needed to act just like that entrepreneur did. I needed to have my own business. I needed to create a business. I had no idea what type of business I wanted to get into, but I know I needed to have a business. What made that entrepreneur different from me? Okay? I studied that for a while. And I found out there was 2 basic things that I could see that were different between us. One, he was willing to take a risk. And second, he had capital. He had money that he could put at his charge to invest, to buy, to create wealth. Now, I was willing to take risk, but unfortunately the type of risk I was willing to take was with somebody else's money. I find that true with a lot of people that want to start a business. They're willing to take a risk, but they want to use somebody else's money to take that risk. They don't have that second part. They don't have that capital. That money you need to go out and invest to make that return. So I had to start getting capital. I had to find out where to get capital. I'd always been careful with money, as I mentioned that once before. In fact, Pam and I were in student government one time, and I think our class was the only one that ever increased marginal balance, gave back more money to the school than they'd spent. And I was financial vice president. I got called several ethnic names by my friends because I was so tight with a dollar. I remember one time we went to, what was our graduation, a dinner someplace in Salt Lake. We went down and we had budgeted out X amount of money for that dinner. And I had a check for it, and I knew how much it was going to cost. Well, doggone it, Pam ordered 2 desserts. She blew my budget. Okay? Somebody else ordered something else. We were over budget. And they were all kidding me. Steve, ha 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 ha, we blew your budget. I think they went 20% over. They thought I was going to give a tip. Well, I did leave a tip, didn't I, Pam? I took out my wallet, I paid the bill with the check that we had, and I left a $1,000 bill right there on the counter. What was wrong with that $1,000 bill, Pam? Did you hear that? It was Monopoly money. I had carried a phony check, anybody know what Monopoly is here? Everybody knows? It's a game you play from Milton Batty with phony money. Well, that gal got a $1,000 tip. It's probably the largest tip she ever got. Unfortunately, it was not legal tender. But anyway, we made budget. We got home, and they still give me a bad time about it today. But we needed to get capital. Arlene and I, when I first went to college, this is a tip maybe I can pass on to you, how to get capital. You need to have a good relationship with your bank. I got a $500 scholarship when I left Logan High School to go to Utah State. And that $500, my grandfather told me, Steve, go borrow against the $500 bucks. He told me, take the $500, go borrow $200 against the $500. Now, any banker knows anything, if he's got $500 cash in the bank, will loan you $200 on your signature with the $500 as collateral. Okay? Took the $200, put it in my pocket, walked out, kept it in my pocket, walked back in next week, and gave him back the $200 I'd borrowed. Okay? Paid a little bit of interest. The next week I went in and borrowed $300 from that same banker with the $500 as collateral. Kept it for a couple weeks, took the money back and gave it to him. Okay? Now I've had 2 successful loans paid off at the bank. Waited a couple weeks, went in and I borrowed $400, the same $500 basis. Kept it for a couple weeks, walked back in, gave it back to the banker. Now I have 3 successful loans on my credit rating. Okay? And it's probably cost me maybe $50, $60. Next time I went in, I wanted to borrow $500. The banker says, we don't need to keep that collateral anymore. You've got such a good track record. We'll let you have $500 just on your signature. So I got my $500 plus a $500 scholarship, kept their $500 for a few weeks and took it back. I did that throughout my college career. By the time I graduated, I could go in and get $5,000, $6,000 by signing my name if I wanted to. Strictly by using their money to create my credit rating. It cost me a little bit of money to do it, but now I have a credit rating and I can go money to the bank. When Arlene and I got back going to Salt Lake City again, another thing that we decided to do is that renting, you get rent receipts. You don't get any tax advantages, you don't get any appreciation, you don't get any advantages from renting houses. We decided we were going to buy a house. So we found a nice duplex on the east side of town by Highland High School that was rented. The upstairs was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It was rented out by a doctor. The downstairs was just 2 bedrooms, had a 3/4 bath and not near as nice. But buying that house, renting it to the doctor, we could live rent-free in the basement. Plus, put a couple $100 a month into our pocket from the rental unit. I love the idea of rental units. I started acquiring more properties. We could do them on assumptions. So the next 2 years, I'm running out of time. 2 years, we started buying all these properties and renting them out. For lean and clean, I'd collect the rents and so forth, along being a CPA. Well, we had the opportunity after a couple of years. I had a friend come to me. Want to throw me up the next slide? Next one. Grandkids, there it is. A friend of mine come to me and say, Steve, let's go into the mobile home business. I thought the guy was crazy. You know, he had to be crazy because this is what I thought mobile homes were. They're down by the railroad track. You know, only transients live in them. He says, no, Steve, look, and this was in 1970, 72, excuse me. So I started looking at this particular industry. Next slide. Okay, I found that in 1972, almost 1 million manufactured mobile homes were sold in the United States, which was 40% of the entire housing produced in the United States. My father was a university professor, and in order to supplement our income, he would build houses during the summer and so forth. So I built houses ever since I got out of junior high school. The thing I hated about building houses was your subcontractors. Your subcontractor would always say, hey, look, I'll be there tomorrow to do the job. He would never tell you what tomorrow he meant. He would never be there tomorrow. It would be the next day, the next day, the next day, and would always foul up your scheduling. Hey, I found with manufactured homes, I could sit in my office, pick up a telephone and say, hey, factory, I want 10 houses today. I want this color, and this floor plan. Send them to me. 2 weeks later, 10 homes would roll into my sales center, and I could retail them and sell them off. I could sell a 1,000-square-foot home, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, washer and dryer, fully furnished for $8,000 and make a 30% margin. That I thought was a great deal. It was a great deal. So I started this business. I had a partner named Brent Van Alphen. We got our MBAs together. Dean Carlisle, who was dean of that department, said, Steve, the best thing you're going to get out of your education is probably not the learning you're going to get here, but the people you're going to meet. And that was true. I'd met Brent through the MBA program. He brought this proposition to me, and it was working, okay? He had great talents. I had different talents. But the things that were different between us was that he had borrowed his money to start the business. I had my money because I got my money and my capital from the apartment houses. Business went great. Next 2 years, it went up. The third year, it's called a business cycle. What goes up also comes down. There was 86 different dealers in Salt Lake City when I started with my lot. Businesses start to fail. My partner had borrowed his money, got panicked and wanted out, so I bought him out. He left, I stayed. Show me more pictures. The industry has changed in the last, I was there for 29 years, from 1973 to about 1999. I built the dealerships up from one dealership to over, well, 54 at one time, down to about 15 when I sold out to Champion Home Builders, a New York Stock Exchange company, in 1999. They came in and paid me a very obscene amount of money to take over all my problems and my inventory and to let me sit there and try to run it for them. They promised me, like everybody does when they buy somebody else out, well, you know, we won't interfere with you, we'll let you do it, you've been successful. That always works until something goes wrong in the big corporation and they want to pass it down to you, and it becomes difficult to operate with them, and they want to dictate to you what you're going to do and how you're going to run your business. I knew that the way they were running their businesses, it wouldn't take too long and I'd be buying the business back. And so I left that business. Next slide. Next one. One more. Keep going. There we go. That's the Bosch kitchen machine. I had a friend who had this business, and he wanted to borrow money. He came to me and he said, Steve, I don't know what to do. I took a look at his books. He was bankrupt. He had receivables on his books forever. He wasn't collecting them. The factory was cutting him off, cutting off his supply. I says, look, I'll come in, I'll reset your business up, I'll recapitalize you, I'll give you the things you need to do to become successful, and when you get successful, you can buy me out. So we went in, we set it up, we went to Korea, we set up a line of kitchen appliances over there to manufacture for us. We brought it in. 2 or 3 years from that time, he is able to get enough money to buy me out. One thing I got out of this, though, if anybody needs a Bosch kitchen machine, I still buy them at wholesale cost. And I can pass that cost on to anybody I want. So we're buying Bosches for all of our friends and so forth all the time. Okay, after I sold off the Bosch machine, get the next thing, a little company called Monavi. Monavi is a direct marketing company, multi-level marketing, that came to me one day with an idea and said, Steve, look, we want to start a multi-level company in diet food products. I said, well, I know nothing about multi-level marketing, but I know about the 2 people that came in and talked to me about it, and they were great people. So he said, sure, I'll fund your operation. They started off, what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? About like that now. They built it up to over $1 billion in sales. 27 different companies, all through multi-level marketing. Great investment, great opportunities. And all these businesses and so forth that we've had, and there's been several others which we don't have time to go through right now, I have found that, hit one more slide, would you? Since we're at BYU, I get the opportunity to use the scriptures, because I think business and your religion should be the same thing. You are asked when you go to your bishop and when you go to your stake president, are you totally honest in your business dealings? You need to be able to say yes. Because that little law up there that was given to Joseph Smith says that there are certain laws in heaven that were decreed before the foundation of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. That's not only the blessing spiritually, but temporally. These laws I'd like to talk to you a bit about. There's a law called I do. This law is very, very important. You've heard of the law of the IQ, haven't you? This is the law of the I do. My kids would come back and say, Dad, we had an IQ test today, and I didn't score high enough to go to the advanced class. And I'd always say, kids, don't worry about IQ, worry about I do. Do it. Do it now. Accomplish it. I have so many people come to me and say, Steve, I want to start a business. Look at this. I've read this book. I've read this book. I've read this book. What do you think? And I say, what do you think? Well, what do you think? They're scared to do it. They won't make the move. They won't take that first step. You look at a baby. How hard is that for the baby to take a first step? If it doesn't take that first step, it's never going to walk. You've got to do it. Another law is the law of debt. What does the prophet say about debt? I found out early on in my business, I thought I owned my business, until there was an economic downturn and my banker decided he didn't want to be in manufactured housing anymore. Came to me and said, Steve, we're going to be liquidating our portfolio in manufactured housing. Find other financing. This is when interest rates were 18%. Tough to do, awkward to do, but I did it. I got help because in 1976, I burned down. My entire operation burned to the ground. I was home watching TV on July 3rd, the night of July 3rd. Turned on Channel 5 News, and there I saw Carefree Homes going up in blazes. Smoke, fire. Boy, I thought, hey, this is it. Ran down there, could let me go in. Walked through a pile of ashes the next day. thought, wow, this could be tragic. I'm out of business. Or I take advantage of that business. I had enough financial resources to hold on until my insurance company came through, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it is an excellent way to change fixed assets to cash. When they burn down, you immediately, the guy comes back and gives you a check. So here I had taken fixed assets, which I couldn't get much out of, and got cash for it. So instead of spending that cash, Shh.
Fireworks. He didn't set.
Nah. But anyway, we got cash, and so we started flooring our own units. And interest rates started climbing and climbing, but it didn't bother us because we could floor our own houses. Flooring, that's the money you pay the bank to put inventory on your lot. If you have cars, your car comes on your lot, the bank will write a check to the manufacturer of that car. That's called your flooring line. Okay? It's money you borrow from the bank for the merchandise that's on your display centers. Anyway, I didn't have to do that from the bank. I got to keep that money myself. So we went from 86 dealers to 10 dealers to 5 dealers. A lot of them disappeared during the 1980s because they couldn't afford the high interest rates. We could expand, we could get more lots and so forth because we had our own capital. We had that very important commodity of capital. Can I give them one more? I got 20 laws here I wanted to go through with you today, and I've only got 2 of them. Have you ever heard the law of the dead horse? This is a very important business law. You need to know it. It was by the Northern Sioux Indians, were one time in battle, and the brave horse died and was shot with an arrow, and he screams up to his chief, "What should I do?" And the chief said, "Get off." Okay? Dead horse theory, if you're riding a dead horse, get off of it. Because it's not going to take you anywhere. Okay? Get off that horse. Too many times I saw my competitors open businesses where they started losing money. And they always thought, hey, they'll change that. They'll turn it around. The economy will change. I said, that's a dead horse. We're going to move. The nice thing about manufactured homes is they have wheels. Down the road, I'll haul my inventory to the next thing. I went from the oil fields of Wyoming, when it was booming in the overthrust belt, to the gold fields in Nevada. When that boomed, everything went down. You have to be flexible. Things are going to change. It's the banker calling. Okay. But anyway, we've got the law of inspection. If you own a business, you got to inspect. General Patton one time said, don't expect what you can't inspect. Okay? A lot of owners think, hey, I'll be an owner, I'll sit home, my employees will do the work for me. It doesn't work that way. Okay? There's certain economic laws that you got to follow and you got to do. Business is a wonderful, exciting thing to be involved with. It gives you the opportunity to be with people. It gives you the opportunity to decide what environment you want to be in. You don't have to sit in a smoke-filled room without taking your sack lunch and die with your tie on. You know? You can do what you want to do. You know, there's fear and faith. And what does the gospel tell us about faith? Faith without what is dead? Works. You can have all the faith that you want to. I'm not giving an evangelical revival here about saved by, your competitors aren't going to save you, and nobody's going to save you. You got to have works. But you got to have faith. And who do you have faith in? Yourself. You got to realize that now, everlastingly and eternally, you're connected with one person. Hopefully that's your wife as a second person, but that one person is yourself. In your education, get the best education you can. Learn what you can. But don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of yourself. Because those blessings God promised you, if you abide by those laws. I'm supposed to open up for Q&A. Anybody have any questions? Yes. Sure. I'll give them the win and we can give them to you in class, or Seth can give them to you in class. Okay? These are just little laws that I thought of. So, okay. Any other questions? Yes. How do you know if you're riding a dead horse? Pray. Okay? You pray. You find out what the Lord wants you to do. There's financial considerations. Don't be afraid to make a change. That's what my whole talk is about. Don't be afraid to make a change, because change is going to happen in your lives. Whether you want it to happen or not, it happens. Be flexible and be able to take advantage of that change. That's where you'll find success. Okay? Brothers and sisters, it's great to be with you. I say these things to you in Jesus Christ's name, amen.